The millionaire pleaded. "Make my son speak, and my entire salary is yours." The shy waitress froze, and then a smile graced her lips, and what followed left everyone utterly speechless. Before we jump in, let's shower this comment section with hearts from every corner of the globe. The December rain was relentless, battering against the windows of the Golden Spoon, Seattle's most sought-after dining experience. Alexander Hayes entered through the mahogany doors, his son, Liam, clinging tightly to him. The boy's tiny hands gripped his father's navy Armani suit, his eyes distant despite the lavish warmth that enveloped them. Alexander's jaw was set hard, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. 6 years. 6 years of silence. "Mr. Hayes, your usual table?" The maitre d' rushed forward, instantly recognizing the tech magnate. Alexander gave a curt nod, barely acknowledging the man as he led Liam to their private corner booth. His son's body was stiff, showing no response to the gentle touch Alexander maintained on his back. They'd explored every avenue. Speech therapists from Johns Hopkins, behavioral specialists from the Mayo Clinic, even experimental treatments in Switzerland. All to no avail. The boy, who by all rights should be chattering incessantly about dinosaurs and superheroes, remained trapped within his silent world. "I'll send your server right over, sir." Alexander settled Liam into the booth, carefully arranging cushions around him. The boy gazed blankly at the rain-streaked window, his profile heartbreakingly beautiful in the candlelight. Dark hair, mirroring his father's, framed eyes that held mysteries Alexander felt helpless to unlock. He had constructed a billion-dollar empire by tackling seemingly insurmountable problems. Yet his own son remained an enigma he couldn't solve. "It's okay, buddy," Alexander whispered, though he was unsure who he was really trying to reassure. "We'll just have a nice dinner, you and me." Footsteps approached, soft and hesitant against the marble floor. Alexander looked up, poised to rattle off their usual order when he saw her. The new server appeared young, perhaps in her mid-20s, with light brown hair neatly secured in a simple bun and eyes the color of rain-washed steel. She wore the restaurant's standard uniform, black slacks and a crisp white shirt under a spotless apron. But something about her movements struck him. She moved with a careful grace, observant, as if meticulously cataloging everything while simultaneously trying to fade into the background. "Good evening, Mr. Hayes." Her voice was soft, almost melodic. "I'm Megan, and I'll be taking care of you this evening." Alexander gave her a cursory glance, his attention fixed on Liam. "The boy needs chicken tenders plain with steamed vegetables. I'll have the ribeye medium rare, and a Macallan 25, neat." So of course. Megan didn't immediately leave. Alexander felt her gaze linger, and when he looked up sharply, he found her studying Liam with an expression he couldn't quite decipher. Not pity, thank goodness. Not pity, but something else entirely. Recognition, perhaps? "Is there a problem?" Alexander's tone sharpened. He was accustomed to curious stares and unsolicited advice about his son from well-meaning strangers. Megan's cheeks flushed a delicate pink, and she took a small step backward. "No, sir, I apologize. It's just, may I ask his name?" "Liam." The word came out more harshly than intended. "And before you suggest it, we've exhausted every therapy known to modern medicine. So, unless you happen to have a medical degree concealed under that apron, I'd appreciate it if you would simply take our order." The sharpness of his words hung heavy in the air between them, and Alexander felt the familiar wave of guilt wash over him. He wasn't usually unkind to service staff, but exhaustion and desperation had eroded his patience to nearly nothing. That morning, another doctor had used the word hopeless, as if his brilliant, beautiful son was somehow irreparably broken. But Megan didn't flinch. Instead, she met his gaze with quiet dignity. "I wasn't going to suggest anything, Mr. Hayes. I was simply going to say that Liam is a beautiful name. It means strong-willed warrior in Irish." Something tightened in Alexander's chest. He had personally chosen the name, hoping his son would embody its meaning. Before he could formulate a response, Megan did something unexpected. She gracefully lowered herself to Liam's eye level, several feet away, respecting the boy's personal space. "Hello, Liam," she said softly, not reaching out, not demanding attention. "I hope you enjoy your dinner tonight." For one impossible second, Liam's gaze shifted from the window. His eyes locked onto Megan's face, and Alexander's breath caught in his throat. His son never looked at strangers. Never. But there was Liam, staring at this young waitress with something that appeared remarkably like curiosity. Then the moment shattered. Liam's eyes returned to the window, his small body retreating back into its protective shell. But Alexander had witnessed it. That fleeting flicker of connection, gone so quickly he might have imagined it. Megan rose smoothly, her expression professionally neutral, although Alexander thought he detected something in her eyes, a hint of sadness, or perhaps understanding. "I'll put your order in right away, Mr. Hayes." She turned to leave, and Alexander heard himself speak before his brain had a chance to catch up. "Wait." Megan paused, turning back with raised eyebrows. Alexander's fingers drummed a restless rhythm against the tabletop, a habit he indulged in when grappling with complex problems. This waitress had achieved something in 30 seconds that dozens of specialists had failed to accomplish in years. She had made Liam look, truly look. It was probably nothing, he reasoned. A fluke, a coincidence. But Alexander hadn't risen from a humble Philadelphia row house to the Forbes 400 list by disregarding potential opportunities. "You," he said, his voice low and intense. "You made my son look at you." I'm not sure what you mean, sir." "Don't feign modesty. Liam hasn't made eye contact with a stranger in over a year. You did something. What was it?" Megan's hands twisted nervously in her apron, a gesture that made her appear even younger than her years. "I didn't do anything special, Mr. Hayes. I just spoke to him like a person. Not a problem." The words struck Alexander with the force of a physical blow. How many times had he heard doctors discussing Liam as a case study, a diagnosis, a condition to be managed? When had he last simply spoken to his son, without meticulously analyzing every word for signs of progress, for meaning, for hope? "I have a proposition for you." Alexander leaned forward, his businessman's instincts seizing control. "Spend time with Liam. Make him speak. If you can get my son to say one word, just one word, I'll give you my monthly salary." Megan's eyes widened in surprise. "Mr. Hayes, I'm just a waitress. I'm not qualified to—" Alexander interjected, naming a figure that would irrevocably alter the life of any working-class individual. "1 month. Make my son speak." The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Rain continued its relentless assault on the windows. Somewhere in the kitchen, dishes clattered. But in their secluded corner booth, time stood still as Megan fixed Alexander with her unwavering gray eyes, searching his face. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because," Alexander responded simply, "you're the first person he's looked at in a year. That has to signify something." Megan's gaze drifted back to Liam, and Alexander observed it again. That peculiar spark of recognition, as if she could perceive something within his silent son that others overlooked. When she turned her attention back to Alexander, a steely resolve lay beneath her gentle demeanor. "I'm not interested in your money, Mr. Hayes." Alexander blinked, taken aback. In his world, everyone was motivated by money. Everyone. "Then what do you want?" "Respect." Megan's chin lifted slightly. "If I agree to spend time with Liam, and I'm not saying that I will, it won't be because you're paying me. It will be because every child deserves someone who sees them as perfect, exactly as they are." For the first time in months, Alexander Hayes found himself at a loss for words. This young waitress, likely earning minimum wage plus tips, had just turned down $250,000 and delivered a lecture on how he should be regarding his own son. He should have been insulted. Instead, he felt something unexpected. "Hope. Then why would you do it?" he asked quietly. Megan's expression softened, and for a fleeting moment, Alexander glimpsed an ocean of pain hidden behind her eyes. "Because I know what it's like to be silent when you have so much to say." Before Alexander could respond, Liam's small hand reached out and touched the table where Megan had been standing just moments before. The gesture was so deliberate, so purposeful, that both adults froze. Liam's fingers traced an invisible pattern on the wood, his eyes still fixed on the rain-streaked window. But he was reaching toward where she had been. "I'll bring your dinner," Megan said softly. And this time, Alexander didn't stop her as she walked away. He watched her disappear into the kitchen, his mind teeming with possibilities and unanswered questions. Who was this mysterious waitress who rejected his money? What secrets lay hidden behind those enigmatic gray eyes? And why had his son responded to her when he had remained unreachable to everyone else? Alexander looked down at Liam's small hand, still resting on the table, still tracing that invisible pattern. Maybe, just maybe, this rain-soaked December night marked the beginning of something extraordinary. Maybe miracles did exist, adorned with servers' aprons and speaking in gentle voices. Maybe hope had a name, and that name was Megan. 3 days later, Alexander found himself doing something he had never done before. Standing in the employee parking lot of the Golden Spoon at 10:47 p.m. Waiting for a waitress to finish her shift. The December cold pierced through his cashmere coat, but he barely noticed. He had spent the past 72 hours researching Megan Cole, or rather, attempting to. The woman was an enigma. No social media presence, no LinkedIn profile. Her employment record revealed that she had commenced working at the restaurant 6 months prior, listing an address in a modest neighborhood near Green Lake. Prior to that, nothing. It was as if Megan Cole had materialized out of thin air in June of 2024. Alexander was certain because he had engaged the same investigator who had vetted his executive team. The report had been disappointingly sparse. "Most people leave digital footprints, Mr. Hayes," the investigator had explained. "Miss Cole has actively erased hers," which only served to amplify Alexander's curiosity and reinforce his conviction that she was precisely what Liam required. The restaurant's back door swung open, and Megan emerged, wrapping a thin jacket tightly around herself against the biting cold. She froze when she spotted Alexander leaning against his midnight blue Tesla. For a moment he thought she might flee. "Mr. Hayes." Her voice was carefully neutral. "Are you lost?" "I'm exactly where I need to be." Alexander pushed away from the car. "We need to discuss my proposition. I already gave you my answer. You said you weren't interested in money. I'm listening. What would make you interested?" Megan's eyes narrowed slightly, and Alexander recognized the look. It was the same expression he wore when weighing risk versus reward in a high-stakes business deal. This young woman was far more astute than she pretended to be. "Why are you really here, Mr. Hayes? You don't strike me as someone who chases down waitresses in parking lots." "I'm here because my son hasn't slept through the night in 6 years, because I've exhausted every conceivable medical option, because 3 days ago you made him look at you, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about what that means." The words tumbled out more rawly than Alexander had intended, and he saw Megan's expression shift, surprised, then softening with something that resembled sympathy. "I'm sorry you're going through this," she said quietly, "but I can't help you." "Can't or won't? Both." Megan began to walk toward an old Honda Civic that had clearly seen better days. "I'm just a waitress, Mr. Hayes. Whatever you think you saw, you're mistaken." Alexander moved to block her path, then immediately stepped back when he saw her stiffen. Too aggressive, he chided himself. He forced himself to take a deep breath, to approach this like a negotiation rather than a desperate father grasping at straws. "You're lying," he said simply, "and you're not very good at it. The way you moved around Liam, the precise distance you maintained, the tone of your voice, those aren't instincts. That's training." Megan's hands clenched at her sides. "You don't know anything about me. And then tell me, who are you really, Megan Cole?" For a long moment, she remained silent. Rain began to fall again, light and cold, but neither of them moved. Alexander watched as a kaleidoscope of emotions flickered across her face. Fear, anger, longing, pain. Whatever she was concealing, it was consuming her from within. "I used to be someone," Megan finally said, her voice barely audible above the rain. "Someone who helped children like Liam. Someone who was good at it. But that person is gone, Mr. Hayes. I can't bring her back, even for your son." Alexander's pulse quickened. He had been right. What happened? None of your business. It is if it involves my son. Megan's eyes flashed with sudden fire. Your son is a beautiful, perfect child who doesn't need to be fixed. He needs to be understood, and I can't. Her voice cracked. I can't be responsible for another child. I can't carry that weight again. The pain in her words was so raw that Alexander felt it resonate in his own chest. Whatever had befallen this woman, it had utterly shattered her. But he also detected something else. Genuine concern for Liam, even though she barely knew him. Then don't be responsible, Alexander said carefully. Just be present. Spend time with him. No pressure, no expectations. Let him teach you what he needs. That's not how it works. Then show me how it does work. Because right now I'm failing my son every single day, and I'm running out of options. Megan's eyes met his, and Alexander saw the internal battle raging within her. She wanted to say yes. He could sense it. But something was holding her back. Some specter from her past that had sunk its claws deep into her soul. If I do this, she said slowly, it's not for money. It's not for you. It's for Liam, because he deserves better than the parade of specialists you've probably dragged him through. Alexander flinched, but nodded. Agreed. And we do this my way. No doctors, no therapists, no observation rooms with two-way mirrors. Just me, Liam, and time. How much time? As long as it takes. And if I say stop, we stop. No arguments, no negotiation. My decision is final. Alexander's business instincts screamed a vehement protest. Never grant someone complete control, especially someone with a deliberately erased past. But his father's instincts, the ones he had learned to trust above all others, urged him to say yes. Deal. He extended his hand. Megan studied it for a long moment before finally shaking it. Her hand was small and cold in his, but her grip was surprisingly firm. I'll need you to clear your schedule for tomorrow afternoon. Bring Liam to Green Lake Park, by the duck pond. 3 p.m. I have a board meeting. Then Liam is clearly not your priority. Alexander's jaw tightened. No one spoke to him that way. No one. But he thought of Liam's small hand, reaching toward where Megan had stood, and swallowed his pride. I'll be there. Megan released his hand and moved toward her car. Mr. Hayes, one more thing. Yes? Whatever you think you'll find when you delve into my past. And I know you're already doing it. It won't help you understand what Liam needs. Some things can't be researched. They can only be felt. She drove away before Alexander could respond, her tail lights disappearing into the December rain. He stood alone in the deserted parking lot, his coat now soaked, his mind racing. Who was Megan Cole? What had transpired to make her erase her entire digital existence? And why did every fiber of his being tell him that this mysterious, wounded woman was precisely what his son needed? Alexander extracted his phone and sent a text to his assistant. Cancel everything tomorrow afternoon. Personal emergency. Then he sent another to his investigator. Expand the search. I want to know everything about Megan Cole, starting from birth. Price is no object. The following afternoon, Alexander arrived at Green Lake Park 15 minutes early, with Liam swathed in a warm coat. The duck pond shimmered under a pale winter sun, and families strolled along the paths despite the biting cold. Liam sat quietly on the park bench, his small hands folded in his lap, his eyes tracking the ducks but betraying no emotion. She'll be here soon, buddy, Alexander said, though a sliver of doubt gnawed at him. Perhaps Megan had reconsidered. Perhaps the previous night's conversation had been too intense, too revealing. But at precisely 3 p.m. Megan appeared on the path. She wasn't wearing her restaurant uniform. Instead, she was dressed in jeans, boots, and a thick cream-colored sweater that softened her appearance, making her seem younger. Her hair was loose, cascading past her shoulders in soft waves. She carried a backpack. "Hello, Liam," she said, approaching slowly. Then, turning to Alexander, "You can go now." Alexander blinked in surprise. "Excuse me? This works better without parental observation. You're free to watch from a distance if you need to, but please give us space." I'm not leaving my son with a stranger. Megan's expression remained calm. Then this won't work. Trust is the foundation of everything, Mr. Hayes. Liam needs to know he can be himself without being watched, analyzed, or judged. Alexander glanced at his son, then back at Megan. Every protective instinct screamed at him to refuse, but he remembered their agreement. Her way or no way at all. I'll be at the coffee shop across the street, he said tightly. You have 1 hour. We'll take as long as we need. Alexander's hands clenched into fists, but he forced himself to turn and walk away. Every few steps, he glanced back over his shoulder. Megan had sat down beside Liam, not too close, and was removing items from her backpack. Books, colored pencils, and what appeared to be a small wooden puzzle. She wasn't trying to actively engage Liam. She was simply existing alongside him, creating a quiet, undemanding presence. Alexander made it to the coffee shop and ordered an espresso he didn't drink. Instead, he watched through the window. 45 minutes elapsed. Megan and Liam sat together in comfortable silence. Occasionally, she would show him something but never pressured him. She merely offered and waited. Then Alexander saw it. Liam's hand slowly reached out toward one of the colored pencils. He picked it up, examining it in the pale sunlight. Megan didn't react, didn't offer praise, didn't make a fuss. She simply opened a sketchbook and began to draw, her movements relaxed and natural. And Liam, his beautiful, silent son, lowered the pencil to a blank page and made a single mark. One blue line across the white paper. Alexander's espresso cup rattled against its saucer as his hand trembled. It wasn't speech. It wasn't even close. But it was communication. It was Liam reaching out, choosing to engage with the world instead of retreating from it. Who the hell was Megan Cole? 2 weeks into their arrangement, Alexander had learned 3 things about Megan Cole. She was punctual to the minute. She never accepted his offers to drive her anywhere. And she was transforming his son in ways he had deemed impossible. Liam hadn't spoken yet, but he had begun to draw. Complex, beautiful pictures that hinted at an inner world far richer than anyone had imagined. What Alexander hadn't learned was anything about Megan's past. His investigator had finally unearthed something, and the report sat like a weight in Alexander's briefcase as he drove to Green Lake Park for another session. He shouldn't read it. Their agreement was predicated on trust, but the need to protect his son superseded everything else. He had waited until he had parked the car before opening the file. What he discovered sent a shiver of dread down his spine. Megan Elizabeth Cole, Ph.D. in child psychology from Stanford, former head of pediatric trauma therapy at Seattle Children's Hospital, published researcher in selective mutism and childhood trauma. By the age of 28, she had been one of the most promising child psychologists on the West Coast. Then, 2 years ago, a case, a patient, a tragedy. The details were sealed, but the investigator had managed to unearth archived newspaper articles. A 7-year-old patient under Dr. Cole's care had died. The death had been ruled accidental. No fault had been found with Dr. Cole's treatment, but she had resigned immediately, forfeited her license, and vanished from the medical community entirely. Alexander stared at the report, his mind reeling. Megan wasn't merely qualified to help Liam. She was overqualified. She had been brilliant, and something had shattered her so completely that she had erased her entire professional existence. Mr. Hayes? Alexander's head snapped up. Megan stood beside his car window, her expression puzzled. Are you coming? Liam's waiting. Alexander quickly closed the file, but not before Megan's eyes had caught the Stanford logo emblazoned on the letterhead. Her face drained of all color. You investigated me. It wasn't a question. Alexander climbed out of the car, the file clutched tightly in his hand. I had to know who was spending time with my son. And now you know. Megan's voice was devoid of all emotion. Dr. Cole, the child psychologist who killed her patient. The report states that it was an accident. No fault. The report is wrong. The words burst from Megan with devastating force. I was responsible for Emma. I was supposed to protect her, and she died because I missed something. Because I wasn't good enough. Megan. No. She took a step backward, her hands trembling. This is exactly why I stopped. Why I can't do this anymore. You want me to help Liam, but what if I fail him too? What if I miss something again? Alexander understood it then. The immense weight she had been carrying, the debilitating guilt that had driven her to abandon everything she had built. Regardless of what the official report had stated, Megan held herself accountable for what had happened with Emma. Then fail, Alexander said quietly. Fail 100 times, but don't fail by walking away. Megan's eyes glistened with unshed tears. You don't understand. Emma's mother trusted me. She believed I could help her daughter. And her voice broke. I have nightmares every night where Emma is calling for me, and I can't reach her. I can't survive that again. So, you'd rather survive as half a person, working a job that doesn't challenge you, suppressing your brilliance, pretending you're just a waitress? Alexander's voice was gentle but firm. That's not survival, Megan. That's slow death. At least no one else gets hurt in my slow death. What about Liam? Alexander pulled out his phone, displaying a photo from the previous day. Liam actually smiling while drawing one of his pictures. You've given him something no specialist could. Hope, connection, a reason to reach out instead of retreat. Are you going to take that away because you're afraid? Megan stared at the photo, her breath catching in her throat. That's not fair. Nothing about this situation is fair. Not what happened to you, not what happened to Emma, not Liam's silence. But here we are, and you have a choice. Let your past define you, or let it refine you. For a long moment, Megan said nothing. Alexander watched as a storm of emotions raged across her face. Fear, grief, longing, determination. Finally, she lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes with something that resembled courage. If I keep doing this, and that's a big if, we need new rules. Name them. No more investigating me. No more digging into my past. What I choose to share, I share. The rest stays buried. Alexander nodded slowly. Agreed. And if I need to stop, even if Liam is making progress, you have to let me walk away. No guilt. No pressure, no trying to change my mind. That stipulation was harder to accept. But Alexander recognized the look in her eyes. The same desperate need for control that he felt every time a doctor suggested a new treatment for Liam. Agreed. Megan's shoulders relaxed slightly. He was being just a little bit too familiar, and that irked her. One more thing, she said. Stop calling me like you know me. You don't. You know my resume and my sob story, but you don't know me. Then help me know you, Alexander responded in a gentle tone. Not as Dr. Cole or the waitress or the woman with the tragic past. Just as Megan, whatever that means to you. Something shifted in Megan's face. A flicker of surprise. Maybe even the dawning of trust. Before she could say anything, they both heard it. A sound coming from the park bench where Liam was sitting, waiting and humming. It was soft and hesitant, but unmistakably a melody. Alexander and Megan froze, staring at the little boy who had been silent for 6 years. Liam was humming, actually producing sound, while he was drawing in his sketchbook. The tune was simple, almost childlike, but to Alexander, it was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard in his life. Oh my God! Alexander breathed, his voice thick with emotion, but Megan reacted quickly, grabbing his arm before he could rush toward his son. Don't, she warned him, her voice urgent. Don't make a big deal out of it. Just let him be. Let him discover his voice at his own pace. It took every ounce of Alexander's self-control, but he managed to stay still. He stood there and watched his son hum that simple little melody. He watched as Megan slowly approached and sat down beside him without saying a word. He watched her pick up her own pencil and start to draw as if nothing miraculous was happening. But it was a miracle. After 6 long years of silence, his son was making sounds. And it was all because of this broken woman who had tried to run away from her gifts, but who simply couldn't escape who she truly was. Alexander looked at Megan, really looked at her, and saw something that genuinely scared him. She wasn't just Liam's miracle. She was becoming his miracle, too. This brilliant, damaged, mysterious woman who had refused his money, challenged his assumptions, and made him want to be a better man than he was. Thank you, he said quietly, the words heartfelt. But Megan couldn't hear him from where she was sitting with Liam. And as the December sun streamed through the bare trees, Alexander Hayes realized that maybe the miracle he'd been searching for wasn't just about making Liam speak. Maybe it was about learning to listen. To his son, to this extraordinary woman, and to the voice inside himself that was telling him that some things were worth more than all his billions combined. Maybe love had been waiting for him all along, disguised as hope, speaking in colors and music and the sound of a child's first hum in 6 years. Maybe miracles really did exist. And maybe they were just getting started. Christmas Eve arrived with an unexpected snowfall, blanketing the city of Seattle in a pristine, white silence. Alexander stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, watching the city transform into a winter wonderland, while his phone buzzed incessantly with calls he was deliberately ignoring. His mother, Victoria Hayes, was hosting her annual charity gala that night, an event where Seattle's elite gathered to see and be seen. She expected him to attend with his son, and preferably with a suitable woman on his arm. The problem was, Alexander couldn't stop thinking about an inappropriate woman, one who wore a simple server's uniform and carried a heavy load of secrets, and who was somehow, slowly, bringing his son back to life. It had been 3 weeks since that first hesitant hum, and Liam had progressed to soft vocalizations. Not words yet, but sounds with intention. Laughter when Megan showed him something funny. A sigh of contentment when he was drawing. Each new sound was a victory that made Alexander's chest ache with emotions he thought had died when his wife, Claire, had walked out 4 years earlier. Claire, beautiful, ambitious Claire, had taken one look at their silent son and decided that motherhood simply wasn't worth sacrificing her high-profile modeling career. The divorce papers had arrived on Liam's 2nd birthday, like a cruel and heartless gift. Mr. Hayes, his housekeeper, Mrs. Chun, appeared in the doorway. Your mother is on the line again. She's quite insistent. Alexander sighed. Tell her I'll be there. But he wouldn't be going alone. An idea had been forming in his mind. Reckless, possibly stupid, but impossible to ignore. He picked up his phone and dialed Megan's number. Hello. Her voice sounded wary. They'd maintained a strictly professional distance since that tense confrontation in the parking lot. I need a favor, Alexander said. And before you refuse, just hear me out. This already sounds like a bad idea. My mother is hosting a charity gala tonight. She wants to meet Liam. More importantly, she wants to interrogate whoever I'm dating about their pedigree and bank account. And you're not dating anyone. Exactly, which is where you come in. There was silence on the other end of the line. Absolutely not. Megan, my mother will eat Liam alive with her judgments and expectations. But if I show up with someone she needs to impress, someone who can deflect her attention, find another actress for your charade, Mr. Hayes. I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want an actress. I want someone who actually cares about my son. Someone who will stand between him and the vultures, who will stare and whisper and offer their useless medical opinions. More silence. Alexander could practically hear her internal debate. One night, Megan finally said. And you owe me. Name your price. Tell me why your wife left. The request caught Alexander completely off guard. That's personal. You investigated my tragedy. Fair is fair. Alexander's jaw tightened. But she was right. She left because Liam wasn't perfect. Because being a special needs mother didn't fit her carefully crafted brand. She'd signed away her parental rights in exchange for a generous settlement and never looked back. I'm sorry, Megan said softly, her voice laced with empathy. No child deserves that. No, he doesn't. But now you know why I need someone who won't see Liam as a problem to be fixed or a burden to be managed. I need someone who sees him as perfect exactly as he is. Your words remember you fight dirty, Mr. Hayes. When it matters, yes. I'll send a car at 6. Wear something fancy. I don't own anything fancy. Then wear something you feel confident in. That's all that matters. When Alexander ended the call, he felt something unfamiliar stirring inside him. A nervous anticipation. This was supposed to be about protecting Liam first and foremost. So why did his pulse quicken at the thought of Megan in his world, standing beside him as more than just his son's therapist? At 6:47 p.m. Alexander's penthouse elevator doors opened, and Megan stepped out. Alexander's breath caught in his throat. She was wearing a simple emerald dress that highlighted the gray flecks in her eyes, and her hair was swept up to reveal the graceful curve of her neck. No expensive jewelry, no designer labels, but she looked absolutely stunning. "Don't look at me like that," Megan said, her cheeks flushing a delicate pink. "This is business." "Of course." Alexander adjusted his bow tie, suddenly self-conscious about how formal his tuxedo felt. Liam's excited. He picked out his own tie, a blue one with ducks on it, to wear with his tiny suit. Megan's expression softened. "Where is he?" "Living room. Fair warning, he wants to show you his newest drawing." They found Liam on the carpet, surrounded by his art supplies. When he saw Megan, his face lit up with a radiant smile that made Alexander's heart twist with emotion. His son had smiled more in 3 weeks with Megan than he had in years with specialists. "Hi, Liam." Megan knelt down beside him, her dress pooling around her. "What are you working on?" Liam held up a picture, 3 figures, a tall man in blue, a small boy, and a woman with yellow hair. They were holding hands under a vibrant rainbow. "That's beautiful," Megan whispered, her voice thick with emotion, and Alexander saw her eyes shimmer with tears. The drive to the Four Seasons was quiet. Liam sat between them in the back of the town car, his small hand resting trustingly on Megan's arm. Alexander watched them in the reflection of the window and felt something shift deep inside his chest. They looked like a family, an impossible, complicated, completely improbable family. "Tell me about your mother," Megan said suddenly, breaking the silence. "So I know what I'm walking into." Alexander chose his words carefully. "Victoria Hayes is old Seattle money. She believes in maintaining appearances, strategic marriages, and that children should be seen but not heard, which makes Liam's silence both a disappointment and a convenience to her." "She sounds delightful," Megan said dryly. "She's complicated. She loves me in her own way, but her way involves control and expectations that I stopped meeting years ago when I made my own fortune instead of managing hers. So, tonight is about proving I don't need her approval. Tonight is about protecting Liam from her judgment." The Four Seasons ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and overflowing champagne glasses. Women in designer gowns air-kissed each other while men discussed portfolios and politics. Alexander felt Megan stiffen beside him as heads turned their way, assessing, calculating. "Mr. Hayes," a board member approached, his voice booming. "We expected you to skip this year. Couldn't disappoint my mother." Alexander's hand moved protectively to the small of Megan's back, a silent gesture of support. "Robert Chun, this is Megan Cole." Robert's eyes swept over Megan with barely concealed curiosity. "Charming. And what do you do, Miss Cole?" Before Megan could answer, a voice cut through the crowd like a razor-sharp blade. "Alexander, you're late." Victoria Hayes approached, a vision in ice-blue silk, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her expression perfectly controlled. She looked at Liam with the same warmth she might show a piece of furniture, then turned her attention to Megan with a sharp, assessing gaze. "Mother." Alexander's tone was cool and carefully neutral. "This is Megan Cole." "Megan, my mother, Victoria Hayes." "Mrs. Hayes." Megan extended her hand with surprising grace. "Your charity work is admirable." Victoria's handshake was brief and perfunctory. "How kind. And how did you meet my son?" "Let me guess. Through business?" "Through Liam, actually." Megan's voice remained steady despite the obvious interrogation. "I've been spending time with him." "How maternal." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "And what exactly do you do, Miss Cole?" Alexander felt Megan tense beside him. This was the moment. She could reveal her credentials, claim her expertise, meet his mother on equal intellectual footing. Instead, she lifted her chin and said clearly, "I'm a waitress at the Golden Spoon." The silence that followed was deafening. Robert Chen's eyebrows shot up in surprise. Victoria's expression froze into something between horror and outright fury. Around them, conversations paused as people strained to overhear. "A waitress," Victoria repeated, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "Alexander, might I have a word with you? Privately?" "No." Alexander's arm tightened around Megan's waist. "Anything you need to say, you can say here." "Very well." Victoria's eyes were like chips of ice. "I will not stand by and watch you embarrass this family with some gold-digging service worker who saw an opportunity." "That's enough." Alexander's voice cut through the tension like tempered steel. "You don't know anything about Megan. I know she serves food for a living and you're worth $3 billion. The math isn't complicated." "The complicated part," Megan said quietly, stunning them both into silence, "is that I don't want his money, Mrs. Hayes. I never have. I'm here because your grandson needed someone who saw him as a person, not a problem. If that's embarrassing to you, perhaps the problem isn't me." Victoria's face flushed a dangerous red. "How dare you?" A small sound interrupted her tirade. Everyone turned to see Liam, his hand tugging on Megan's dress, his mouth opening and closing as if he was trying to form words. His eyes were wide, distressed by the tension in the adult voices. "Hey!" Megan knelt down immediately, her full attention focused on Liam. "It's okay. Everything's okay." And then, clear as crystal in the silent ballroom, Liam spoke his first word in 6 years. "Meg." The world seemed to stop. Alexander felt his knees go weak. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth in shock. Around them, people stared in stunned disbelief. But Megan just smiled, tears streaming down her face, and whispered, "Yes, sweetheart, I'm here." "Meg," Liam repeated, his small arms reaching out for her. "Me stay." Alexander couldn't breathe, couldn't think. His son, his beautiful, silent son, had spoken, had chosen his first word, and it wasn't Dad or Mama. It was the name of the woman who'd refused his money, challenged his assumptions, and loved his son without any conditions. Megan lifted Liam into her arms, holding him close while he buried his face in her neck. And Alexander saw it clearly for the first time. He wasn't falling for Megan despite her complications. He was falling for her because of them, because she was brave enough to be broken, strong enough to try again, and selfless enough to put a child's needs before her own fears. "I think," Victoria said shakily, her eyes fixed on her grandson, "I owe you an apology, Miss Cole." But Alexander barely heard her. He was too busy watching Megan hold his son, watching Liam cling to the woman who'd become essential to both of them in just 3 short weeks, and realizing that his carefully controlled world was about to get very, very complicated because you couldn't hire love, couldn't negotiate it or control it, or fit it into a neat little business plan. You could only surrender to it and hope it didn't destroy you in the process. And Alexander Hayes was very much afraid that he was already lost. The penthouse was silent at 2 a.m. when Alexander heard footsteps in the hallway. He'd been staring at his bedroom ceiling for hours, replaying the moment Liam had spoken, unable to fully process the reality of it. His son had a voice. After 6 years of silence, the impossible had become possible. He found Megan in the kitchen, still wearing the emerald dress, staring at a cup of tea she hadn't touched. She'd insisted on staying after the gala, worried about Liam after such an emotionally charged breakthrough. Alexander had set her up in the guest room, but clearly, neither of them could sleep. "Can't stop thinking about it either?" Alexander asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. Megan startled, then visibly relaxed when she saw him. He spoke after 6 years. He just spoke. "Because of you." Alexander moved closer, his heart pounding in his chest. "You gave him that. I didn't do anything special. I just listened to what he wasn't saying." Megan's hands tightened around her mug. "But now I'm terrified." "Of what?" "Of this being temporary. Of him regressing. Of—" She stopped, her voice cracking with emotion. "Of failing him like I failed Emma." Alexander sat down across from her, the marble island between them like a barrier they both needed and resented. "Tell me about Emma." Not the official report, the truth. For a long moment Megan said nothing. Then quietly she began. She was 7. Selective mutism following severe trauma. Her father had been abusive before he went to prison, and Emma hadn't spoken in 2 years. Her mother, Sarah, was so desperate for help, and I thought I could fix everything. What happened? Emma was making progress, slowly but steadily. She'd started communicating through drawings, just like Liam. I thought we were close to a breakthrough. Megan's eyes were distant, lost in the painful memories. Then, one night, Sarah called me in a panic. Emma had locked herself in the bathroom and wouldn't come out. Sarah thought she heard crying. And I told her. Megan's voice broke completely. I told her to give Emma space, that forcing the door would undo months of trust building. Alexander felt a cold dread pool in his stomach. Megan. Emma had found her mother's sleeping pills. By the time Sarah broke down the door, it was too late. She was 7 years old, and she died because I told her mother to wait. That's not your fault. A 7-year-old taking pills. I missed the signs of her deteriorating mental state. I was so focused on the mutism that I didn't see the depression underneath. Sarah trusted me, and I let her daughter die. Tears streamed down Megan's face, unchecked. The official report said it was accidental, that Emma didn't understand what she was taking. But I know better. I failed her. Alexander moved around the island, unable to maintain the distance while she was falling apart. So you stopped being Dr. Cole and became just Megan. Erased your entire professional life. I couldn't practice anymore. Every time I saw a child, I saw Emma. Every decision felt like life or death. I was so paralyzed by fear that I became useless. She looked up at him, her gray eyes devastated. And now Liam's speaking, and all I can think is, what if I miss something again? What if my fear or my guilt or my trauma causes me to fail him too? Then you fail, Alexander said, echoing his words from weeks ago. But you fail while trying, not while hiding. You say that now, but when I inevitably let you down, you won't. You don't know that. No, I don't. Alexander reached for her hand, his fingers curling around hers, offering comfort and reassurance. But I know that Liam spoke for the first time tonight because of you. I know that you've gotten more progress out of him in 3 weeks than any specialist achieved in 6 years. And I know that perfection isn't what my son needs. He needs someone who shows up, who tries, who loves him without any conditions. You do all of that. Megan's fingers tightened around his. I'm terrified of how much I care about him. About both of you. This was supposed to be simple. Help Liam, keep my distance. But somewhere along the way you both became... She stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Essential, Alexander supplied quietly. You became essential to Liam. To me. The air between them shifted, charged with an unspoken energy that neither had intended, but couldn't deny. Alexander saw the moment Megan recognized it, too. The way her breath caught in her throat, her eyes widening slightly. This is a bad idea, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Probably. You're my client. There are ethical boundaries. You're not practicing psychology. Those rules don't apply. His name on her lips sent a surge of heat through his veins. He stood, gently pulling her to her feet, his hands framing her face. Tell me you don't feel this. Tell me I'm imagining the way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. Tell me this is all one-sided, and I'll walk away right now. Megan's eyes searched his face, and Alexander saw the internal war raging behind them. Fear, longing, hope, desperation. I can't, she breathed, her voice filled with raw honesty. I can't tell you that. The kiss was inevitable. Soft at first, questioning, giving her ample time to pull away. But Megan didn't pull away. She melted into him with a small, helpless sound that destroyed Alexander's remaining control. His hands slid into her hair, and hers gripped the fabric of his shirt. And for one perfect moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. Two broken people finding something whole in each other. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. I'm falling for you, Megan. Cole, the waitress, the doctor, the woman who's afraid and brave and completely impossible. All of you. This is crazy, Megan whispered, her voice trembling slightly. We barely know each other. I know you love my son. I know you stand up to my mother. I know you'd rather work a minimum wage job than compromise your principles. I know you carry guilt that's not yours to carry. And I know you're the strongest person I've ever met. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. Tell me that's not enough to start with. Megan's smile was tentative but real. You're very persuasive for a CEO. I learned from the best. You negotiated a better deal than most of my business partners. The moment of levity broke some of the intense tension, and Megan laughed softly. But then her expression turned serious again. If we do this, and I'm not saying that we have to be careful. Liam comes first, always. If this affects him negatively in any way, then we stop. Immediately. I agree. Alexander's thumb traced the delicate curve of her cheekbone. But I think Liam would be happy to see his father happy for the first time in years. And I think he already loves you enough that having you in our lives permanently would be a dream come true for him. Permanently? Megan's eyes widened in alarm. Alexander, that's too soon. I know, but I've learned not to waste time on things that don't matter and to fight for the things that do. You matter, Megan. More than I expected, more than I planned for. He smiled ruefully. Turns out, the heart doesn't care much about business plans. Before Megan could respond, they heard a small sound coming from the hallway. Both turned to see Liam standing there in his pajamas, his favorite stuffed duck tucked securely under one arm, his eyes moving between them with an expression that looked remarkably like contentment. Mag, he said clearly, his voice small but certain. Dad here. Alexander's throat tightened with emotion. 2 words. His son had said 2 words, and they were the names of the people standing in this kitchen at 2 a.m., falling for each other despite every logical reason not to. Yes, buddy, Alexander said, his voice rough with emotion. We're both here. Liam walked forward and took Megan's hand. Then Alexander's, bringing their hands together in his small grasp. The gesture was simple yet profound, his silent way of saying that he approved, that this strange new family configuration felt right to him. Okay, Liam whispered, his voice barely audible, and Alexander realized that his son was giving them his permission, blessing this complicated, messy, beautiful thing that was developing between them. Megan looked at Alexander over Liam's head, and in her eyes, he saw surrender. Not defeat, but an acceptance of something that felt inevitable. They were in this together now, all 3 of them. A billionaire with control issues, a brilliant doctor hiding from her past, and a 6-year-old boy finally finding his voice. It was unconventional, improbable, possibly doomed. But as Liam led them both toward the living room, chattering softly about his drawings, Alexander realized that sometimes the best things in life were the ones you couldn't plan for. The ones that arrived disguised as disasters and revealed themselves as miracles. And as Megan smiled at him over their joined hands, Alexander Hayes, who'd thought his heart had died completely when his wife walked out, discovered that it had only been waiting for the right person to bring it back to life. 3 months later, spring arrived in Seattle in a riot of cherry blossoms and rain-washed sunshine. Alexander stood at his office window, phone pressed to his ear, listening to his lawyer explain why Victoria Hayes was contesting his plans. Your mother is arguing that Miss Cole's lack of proper credentials makes her unsuitable for a permanent role in Liam's life. She's threatening to petition for partial custody unless you, and I quote, come to your senses. Alexander's jaw clenched tightly. Since the gala, Victoria had launched a quiet campaign against Megan, spreading whispers at country clubs, raising concerns with board members, but custody threats were new and extremely dangerous. She has no legal standing. Claire signed away her rights. True, but Victoria is Liam's grandmother. If she can somehow prove that Miss Cole's presence is harmful to the child's development, a judge might consider supervised visitation rights for Victoria. The implication was clear. His mother would use any weapon available, including the courts, to maintain her control over the Hayes family legacy. Thanks for the warning. Alexander ended the call just as his office door opened. His assistant appeared, looking extremely nervous. "Sir, there's a Sarah Mitchell here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent. She says it's about Megan Cole." Alexander's blood ran cold. Sarah Mitchell, Emma's mother, the woman whose daughter had died while under Megan's care. "Send her in." Sarah Mitchell was a woman in her early 40s, with tired eyes and strands of gray woven into her otherwise dark hair. She clutched a worn manila folder tightly in her hands and looked around Alexander's lavish executive office with obvious discomfort. "Mr. Hayes, thank you for seeing me. Mrs. Mitchell, what brings you here?" "I heard you're dating Megan," Sarah said, her voice direct and unwavering. "I needed to warn you about what she's capable of." Alexander forced himself to remain calm, to project an air of control he certainly didn't feel. "I know about Emma. Megan told me. Did she tell you that she convinced me to leave my daughter alone when Emma needed me most? That her advice essentially killed my child?" The words hung heavily in the air, like a thick, suffocating poison. Alexander's instinct was to defend Megan, to deny the accusation, but he resisted the urge, knowing he needed to hear Sarah out. Megan needed to hear this, though. Alexander realized she needed to understand the absolute, unvarnished truth. He knew Megan felt a profound sense of responsibility for Emma's death, even though the official report had ruled it an accident. But that official report, he now knew, was tragically wrong. With hands that trembled slightly, Sarah opened her folder. "I found these in Emma's room. They're letters Emma wrote after her sessions with you, but she never sent them to Megan." She extended several pages covered in a child's unsteady handwriting towards Alexander. As he read, he felt a sickening dread creep into his bones. The first letter read, "Dear Dr. Cole, I'm scared all the time. The bad thoughts just won't go away. I don't know how to tell Mommy without making her sadder. Maybe if I was gone, everyone would be happier." Another page bore a similar, heartbreaking message. "Dr. Cole, I tried to tell you with my drawings, but I don't think you understood. The black scribbles mean the darkness inside me. It's getting bigger and bigger." Alexander felt utterly nauseous. These were desperate cries for help that Megan had somehow missed. Or had she? "There's more," Sarah choked out, tears streaming down her face, a testament to her own agonizing grief. "After Emma died, I blamed Megan. I said horrible things to her, things I deeply regret. But last month, I found Emma's journal hidden in her closet, and I finally learned the real truth." She handed Alexander yet another page, and as he read it, his world seemed to tilt on its axis. It was Emma's journal entry from the week before she died. "Dr. Cole asked me about the pills today. She knew something was wrong. She kept asking if I was thinking about hurting myself. I lied. I told her no because I didn't want her to tell Mommy and make Mommy cry even more. Dr. Cole looked so worried. She made me promise to call her anytime, day or night. She gave me her personal number, but I can't call. I can't tell anyone about the darkness," Sarah whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She knew. Megan knew Emma was struggling. She asked all the right questions. She gave Emma every opportunity to be honest with her. "But my daughter lied, because she was desperately trying to protect me." Sarah's voice broke completely. "Megan didn't fail Emma, Alexander. I did. I was so consumed by my own pain after my ex-husband went to jail that I didn't see how much my own daughter was suffering." Alexander's mind reeled. "Why are you telling me all of this?" "Because Megan destroyed her entire career, burdened by a guilt that wasn't hers to carry. Because I said unforgivable things in my grief that made her believe she was somehow responsible. And because—" Sarah pulled out one final document, this one recently printed from a computer. "Someone named Victoria Hayes contacted me last week. She offered me $50,000 to testify that Megan was negligent in Emma's care, to help her build a case to separate Megan from her grandson." A wave of rage, white-hot and pure, surged through Alexander. His own mother had stooped to the lowest possible level, exploiting Megan's deepest vulnerability, weaponizing the death of a child to maintain her iron grip on his life and Liam's. "I assume you refused her offer?" Alexander asked, his voice dangerously calm, barely masking the fury boiling inside him. "Of course I refused," Sarah exclaimed, horrified. "I came here to make sure you knew the truth. Megan Cole is a brilliant therapist who lost a patient despite doing absolutely everything right. She doesn't deserve to lose another chance at happiness because of my grief or your mother's despicable manipulation." After Sarah left, Alexander remained in his office, staring blankly at Emma's letters. Megan had indeed asked the right questions, had given Emma every possible avenue to reach out for help. But she'd been working with a child who was fiercely protective of her mother, a child who was ultimately willing to sacrifice herself to spare her mother more pain. And in the end, that love, so pure and innocent, had proven fatal. Megan hadn't failed Emma. The cruel circumstances had. But Megan, in her immense guilt, had shouldered all the blame, had destroyed her career, and had built a life around atoning for a sin she hadn't committed. Alexander grabbed his phone, his decision firm. There was only one way to end this cycle of pain and manipulation. Only one way to protect both Megan and Liam from Victoria's relentless machinations. "Mother," he said, his voice clipped and unforgiving, when Victoria answered the call. "We need to talk. Now." 90 minutes later, Alexander strode into his mother's opulent Laurelhurst mansion. Sarah Mitchell's folder clutched firmly under his arm. Victoria was waiting for him in her impeccably decorated sitting room, her face perfectly composed, a mask of serene indifference. "Alexander, to what do I owe this unexpected visit?" she asked, her voice cool and condescending. "The games end now, Mother," Alexander said, his voice devoid of warmth. He threw the folder onto the polished coffee table. "Sarah Mitchell came to see me today. She told me all about your generous offer." Victoria's carefully crafted expression didn't flicker, but her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on her delicate teacup. "I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, Alexander." "Don't insult my intelligence," he retorted, his anger rising. "You tried to pay Emma's mother to testify against Megan. You were willing to weaponize the death of a child, to exploit her grief, all to break us up." "I was trying to protect you, Alexander," Victoria insisted, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "That woman is clearly unstable, walking away from her career, lying about her credentials." "She didn't lie, Mother. She simplified, and she walked away because she has a conscience, something you clearly lack," Alexander shot back, his voice laced with contempt. Victoria stood abruptly, her carefully constructed composure finally cracking. "I will not apologize for protecting my family. That waitress is completely unsuitable for you. You could have anyone, Alexander. Anyone." "I don't want anyone else," Alexander said, his voice low and dangerous. "I want Megan, and if you ever threaten her again, if you ever contact Sarah Mitchell, or file custody motions, or spread one more poisonous whisper about Megan in your social circles, I will cut you out of my life completely. No contact with Liam, no family dinners, no Hayes Industries board seat. Nothing." "You wouldn't dare," Victoria scoffed, but her eyes betrayed her fear. Alexander's voice was like cold steel. "I've already drafted the paperwork removing you from the board. One signature and it's done. The only reason I haven't signed it yet is because despite everything, you're Liam's grandmother. But blood doesn't give you the right to destroy the people I love." Victoria sank back into her chair, her face suddenly etched with the lines of age and weariness. "I only wanted what was best for you, Alexander." "No, you wanted control," Alexander corrected her, his voice unwavering. "But I'm not a boy anymore, Mother. And my son deserves better than a grandmother who sees him as a disappointment. So here's what's going to happen. You will call Sarah Mitchell and apologize for your actions. You will withdraw any custody threats, and you will accept Megan as part of this family, or you will have no family at all." For a long, tense moment, Victoria said nothing, her silence heavy with resentment and a dawning realization. Then, finally quietly, she asked, "She really means that much to you, doesn't she?" "She means everything to me," Alexander said, his voice filled with a fierce protectiveness. "She and Liam are my entire world, and I won't let you, or anyone else, threaten that. Alexander left without waiting for a response, his purpose clear. He had one more stop to make, one more hurdle to overcome. He found Megan at Green Lake Park with Liam, both of them laughing joyously as the little boy chased after a flock of ducks, shouting their names with uncontainable glee. Liam's vocabulary had exploded in recent months. He was now stringing together simple sentences, full of wonder and innocent joy. The specialists called it miraculous, a testament to Megan's unwavering love and dedication. Alexander simply called it love. "Meg!" Liam shouted when he saw his father approaching, his little face lighting up with pure delight. "Dad, look, duck." "I see them, buddy," Alexander said, scooping his son up into his arms, then turning to Megan, his expression serious. "We need to talk." Her smile faded instantly, replaced by a look of concern. "What happened, Alexander?" Alexander told her everything. Sarah's visit, the letters, Victoria's manipulative scheme. He watched Megan's face as it cycled through a kaleidoscope of emotions. Shock, disbelief, grief, and finally, something that looked like profound liberation. "She asked the right questions?" Megan whispered, staring at the folder in Alexander's hand, her voice barely audible. "Emma knew she could call me any time, day or night. I gave her every possible tool to reach out for help, and she chose to protect her mother instead because she was only 7 years old, and she loved her mom, and that love made her lie." Alexander reached out and took Megan's hands in his touch gentle but firm. "You didn't fail her, Megan. The situation failed you both, and you've been carrying a burden of guilt that was never yours to carry." Tears streamed down Megan's face, washing away years of self-doubt and recrimination. "I destroyed my entire life over this," she sobbed, her voice choked with emotion. "Then rebuild it with us, Megan," Alexander said, his voice thick with emotion. "Rebuild it with Liam, with me. Let us help you heal." Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Megan's eyes widened in surprise. "I know it's fast. I know we're complicated. But I also know that life is short and love is rare. And when you find someone who makes you better, someone who brings light into your life, you don't let them go." Alexander opened the box, revealing a sparkling diamond ring. "Megan Cole, will you marry me? Will you be Liam's mother? Will you be my partner, my rock, my everything? Let me spend the rest of my life proving to you that you deserve all the happiness you've been denying yourself for so long." "Yes," Liam shouted before Megan could even respond, jumping up and down in Alexander's arms. Me stay forever." Megan laughed through her tears, her gaze shifting between the two Hayes men, the two incredible souls who had somehow become her entire world. "You're both completely crazy," she said, her voice filled with love and affection. "Crazy about you," Alexander said, his voice husky with emotion. He slipped the ring onto her finger, a symbol of their unwavering commitment, a promise of a future filled with love, laughter, and healing. The wedding took place 6 months later in the same park where Megan had first captured Liam's attention, where she had coaxed him to look at her with those big, trusting eyes. It was a small, intimate affair, attended only by the people who truly mattered in their lives. Sarah Mitchell was there, having become an unexpected but cherished friend to Megan through their shared grief and journey of healing. Victoria Hayes stood quietly in the back, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes were slightly wet with unshed tears when Liam, beaming with pride, walked Megan down the aisle, announcing to everyone within earshot, "My Mag, my new mom," as Alexander kissed his bride beneath the canopy of blooming cherry blossoms. With Liam nestled securely between them, he realized that miracles weren't grand, singular events. They were daily choices, small acts of courage and faith. To love despite fear, to try despite the possibility of failure, to believe despite the overwhelming evidence that hope was foolish. Megan Cole had taught him that. His brilliant, beautiful, broken wife, who had been hiding her light for so long, had finally allowed it to shine again, illuminating their lives and filling them with an immeasurable joy. "I love you," he whispered against her lips, his heart overflowing with gratitude. "I love you, too," Megan replied, her voice trembling with emotion. "I love you both forever." And as a gentle spring rain began to fall, soft and perfect, the Hayes family stood together beneath a vibrant rainbow, a scene mirroring Liam's drawing from that first, almost impossible night, a testament to the enduring power of love and hope. Some stories ended in tragedy, leaving behind only pain and regret. But some stories, the rare, precious ones, ended in joy, in second chances, in new beginnings, and in a love that was strong enough to heal even the deepest wounds. This was one of those stories, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, and it was just beginning.